You're listening to China Manufacturing Decoded from the Sofeast Group.
Hello and welcome to China Manufacturing Decoded. In this episode, I am speaking with a guest, a fellow Frenchman actually, living in Asia also for a while. His name is Thierry Bourret, and we are going to talk about product compliance, especially for the EU market, for the European market, but we're going to go a bit wider than that, I'm sure. So, hi Thierry, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Nice to speak with you, Rana. Yes,
Cool.
we are French, and yes, we both live in Asia. I've lived in Asia since 1986.
Yeah.
I've lived overseas since 1986, in Asia on and off since then. The past few years spent in Japan, Hong Kong, and now in Thailand. The name of my company is Konomocha. The company was started in 2015 in Hong Kong, but in 2018, my family and I moved to Bangkok for quality of living, really. And we do not regret that move. It's been a great move. So I'm a fully digital nomad, and I manage my company remotely with my office in Hong Kong. Most of my staff actually based in Philippines.
I see. Okay. Distributed team. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
And what kind of industries, what kind of products?
I work in
categories?
the toy industry mostly, but also touch a little bit on stationery, because there are some products that are, like dough, clay, chalk, can be used in toys and stationery. So we actually work across the two categories.
Right. Yeah. When you look at the regulations in the EU, anything that can be appealing to a child actually has to comply with the toy safety regulation now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. But it's not quite as bad as that in Europe as it is in Japan, for example. In Japan, for example, if it's a toy for below 3 years old, you absolutely comply with food grade as well, because in case the kid put the toy in their mouth. So it's even more complicated and harder to get compliant there.
Right.
I wish that, the kids are the same in every country, and I wish that there was one standard worldwide that would save a lot of money and save a lot of aggravation for everyone. But this is not the case.
For some product, for a lot of electronic products, electrical products, etc., sometimes it's the same IEC standards, but then there's some flavors, right? When it's republished by the Senelec for the EU, or republished by UL or CSA for North America, they will add certain things, and then each country in Europe might even add their own little extra particularities. Yeah,
absolutely. Which is, I don't understand why we have a EU standard like for toys, the N71, but each country will ask you for something different, and some countries are harder than others to import into. France being one of the particularly difficult countries to import into, compared to Netherlands, for example. So a lot of European companies import via Netherlands to avoid the complications of the French import system.
There, yeah, coming from Frenchmen, yeah. Our country likes paperwork and likes to double check and be a little bit difficult sometimes.
And triple check.
Yes. Right. So what are we talking today? So we saw something that you posted actually in LinkedIn a few weeks back, and then we touched base, and you were reacting to something specifically about Amazon and about, let's say, the openness of the market, of the European market, but not just European, right? The openness of the market.
The post was mostly about Amazon, because Amazon has decided to do, to copy what Temu and China are doing, i.e. shipping directly from China to the consumer, and without really checking compliance. We have a system in Europe for the toys to be compliant, and every year some new tests and new things are added to those. But then it seems like, Amazon, Shine, Temu can import more or less whatever they want without having to go through compliance, which seems somewhat unfair. And we're not talking price.
Double standard.
We're talking with double standard. If you look on the European recall system for Rapex, a lot of the toys that are on there are picked from retailers, not from Amazon, not from Shine or Temu. And most of them, they never seem to stop those shipments. I understand that shipping, one item to France or Germany, and for the local custom to open every single item is impossible. But maybe we should close those, impossible, not allow people to order things that have not been tested. And the fact that those platforms don't have any responsibilities to check whether the toy is compliant or not is even more unfair, in my opinion.
Well, maybe we should unpack it a bit because there's a lot of things here. So what you're talking about is the drop shipping, right? One by one from, for example, from China or Hong Kong, sending directly to the home of the consumers, right? And
correct.
We're talking millions of packages every year, right?
Yes.
Small packages actually delivered at for a low price. Shipment is not very expensive because of international agreements between the post offices. And
not only that, but the Chinese have created some hubs in Europe. There are hubs in Netherlands and Belgium where they ship in very large quantities and they are dispatched from those hubs. So therefore, it's easy and cheap way to ship goods directly from the factory in China to a consumer in Europe, bypassing customs. Because if the shipment, there's the de minimis rule, which means that the shipment is not taxed if below, I think it's below 150 euros, and not checked for compliance either.
Right. And why is it not easy for market surveillance authorities to check it? Is because it's not as easy as walking into a Carrefour or an Aldi, right? You walk into the brick and mortar store, you can look, let's say, for example, jewelry, anything that looked like maybe it might have lead or nickel kind of plating. You pick a few, or maybe you come with your XRF gun, choke. This one has heavy metals above the limit. Boom, non-compliant. Choke. This one also. It's very fast, right? But when you're dealing with packages that arrive directly to the homes of people, or you're dealing with a hub, as you mentioned, with a lot of different packages arriving and being rerouted left and right, it's not that easy. You cannot just go to your neighborhood store and put a few samples, right? That's part of the problem, right?
It is the problem. It is the problem. It is just impossible for the local government to just check every single packaging that is coming through. The sheer number is just makes it impossible to manage this.
Right. So what that means is that companies that actually and like brands and let's say serious companies, let's say it this way, serious companies that want to put compliant products, safe products on the market are competing with a lower cost model that can do things faster and cheaper, put new products on the market faster and cheaper, and outside of any government control, basically. That is the real problem, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, if you look at what it has done to the garment market, where the garment shops are struggling and closing at a very fast rate because they cannot compete.
Yeah,
and the same thing will happen. The same thing will happen with the others.
Right. Yeah, and the same thing has been happening in the US. But now, basically, Trump said on May the 2nd, they will stop all of these small packages going through that sort of loophole where, okay, the value is not very high.
The diminished rule in the US is actually higher. I believe it's $800.
Yes.
Which is even, which means like a lot of things can go through. So I understand that he should reduce that. To be honest, I would love to see that at zero in every country to make sure that
that's what they're doing.
Everything. Well, I hope that's what Europe does as well.
Right.
Because so, let's make it zero. Every single package has to be not checked, but at least charge the local duty.
So
and tariff, and tariff is a word in fashion at the moment.
Yeah, right. So different countries have different approaches here, right? When it comes to the US, they want to completely stop the de minimis exemption. So small packages will have to be declared in let's say, a simpler sort of fast track way, but still have to be declared. And then if they're declared and it's in a HS code, a product category where there are tariffs, then of course the tariffs would be the tax would be levied, right? And I think that's the main reason why they are cutting this, because otherwise all the products that could reasonably be declared under $800 now would be shipped that way. So they know they have to stop it, right? So Europe is doing things in a different way. And from what I understand, they want every product sold to consumers in the EU to have a digital passport attached to it, right? Not now, not next year, but this is clearly written in Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation. It's also mentioned in the toy safety regulation and also in the one for building materials, right? And maybe I'm forgetting one or two, but it's starting to pop up in a bunch of these new regulations, and more details about exactly how that will happen will come up little by little as they work out the details, right? But the way Europe is trying to approach this problem is as follows. Number one, all of the customs authorities from all 25 countries will have the same software, and all the products entering will be referred to in the same database. Okay, so a unique entry in the database. And every product will need to have a digital passport, meaning that it will come with some information, right? And some of this information would be for consumers. So it would be in the form of a QR code on maybe the product or the packaging, or on an online store, it would be a link. So the consumers will be able to see some information. People who need to recycle the product also will need to see some information. Very important to know what it's made of and what it's been tested and so on, to make sure that if it's recycled, it's still going to be compliant to chemical regulations and so on. And also the market surveillance authorities, with their own special access or password, if you want, will be able to see more information, more details. And I believe there's a lot of discussions with the retailers and so on who say, no, but you cannot just put it out there, like who is the supplier and where it's made and so on. Like you can't be that transparent. Come on, right? But that's kind of the intent of the Commission. And so everything entering the EU will need to have that special, let's say, link to its digital information, and will need to be declared and put into the unique database, right? So they're doing this, and together with that, from what I read, actually the platforms are somewhat accountable, right? There's different economic operators, right? From the manufacturer, the importer, the distributor, etc. And they are, what is it called? The fulfillment actors or something.
Making a company, when you're in Europe, making a company in China accountable is somewhat difficult, costly in time and money, and therefore very difficult to comply. I think, the idea is good to have some sort of passport for the goods and have a link to where the goods is made and the good is made, or, and where it's made of and things like that. I think the idea is fantastic. And, yes, it's difficult for a retailer to let you know that they bought that in a factory in China, and that particular factory, because it helps with the competition, and sometimes it's commercial information that you don't want to be divulged, and therefore, I get that. I understand both sides. I get both sides of the argument there.
Yeah,
but we need to find a way of making those factories and those platforms accountable for what they sell in our country, and make them follow full compliance, because otherwise it's becoming unfair. Why would I spend a vast amount of money testing my toys and being compliant, while someone can just sell the same thing directly from China at a fraction of the cost and not bother with testing?
Totally. Yeah, that's for sure. On paper, the platforms are responsible, but in practice, it's not there yet. So basically, we'll see, right? It's kind of the jury is out. Let's see in a few years, once the digital passport is in place and the information is pushed to a unified database and so on. Let's see if everything is declared, and if the passport is not satisfactory, the customs might just refuse it and so on. Let's see. Things that are sort of coming into place. I think I like the idea.
For me, it sounds good.
Yeah. Yes, right. So let's see how it goes. On a related topic, so this was about, let's say, product safety mainly, right? What about ESG, right? So sustainability and so on, right? Environment, social, and governance. So there's been a bunch of directives and regulations, and then the trend over the past 1 or 2 years has been, maybe we went a bit too far. Maybe let's just keep it for very big companies. Let's delay it a little bit, right? The corporate sustainability due diligence directive, and so on. I can
tell you that we still have companies coming to visit factories. I had Dollar Tree here in Thailand last week to inspect a new factory I'm working with, and that part of the audit that they did was about environmental and impact and also safety for the workers. It's maybe large companies, but I realize that with the new government in the US, sustainability and safety and so on may not be the order of the day, but I don't think we should forget it. I think it's still a very important issue that we can't just forget. Forget it at your peril.
Part of risk. It's part of risk management, right?
Yeah, it is part of risk management. Making sure that your factory doesn't employ slave labor surely is not only a matter of being ethical. It's being able to look at yourself in the mirror in the morning and think, well, I'm doing okay. I don't want to work with factories like this, and that's one of the reasons that I personally visit factories before I work with them.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, I think every professional buyer will agree that visiting the factory, doing a bit of due diligence on certain point is quite important. Knowing where the let's say the risky steps of manufacturing are taking place, and keeping an eye on them, all of that is quite important. Yeah, obviously. And if you work for maybe big retailers or brands, it's also part of their brand image to make sure that they don't have negative coverage.
Absolutely. And we don't, I mean, I don't know anyone that, everyone is looking for pricing. Yes, true. But the last thing they want is for them to take a risk to work with a factory that is unsafe. or treat his employees badly. The fallback from that, you remember a number of years ago, again in the garment industry, where that building collapsed.
The Rana Plaza.
That brought a lot of bad news to the companies that were working with there in that building.
Right. Yes. And the previous year, it was the Tazrin factory that burned, that put Walmart Canada in hot water. But then, that collapse of the Rana Plaza in Dhaka, that really, a lot of different garment factories were in that big building, actually. And they were making a lot of branded apparel products. So that made an enormous amount of noise. Actually, we saw a lot of companies move production away from Bangladesh for maybe 1, 2, 3 years, and then they came back. They all came back. But
eventually they do, because the price pressure, pressure, and they all eventually go back to the same place, because it's the race to the bottom.
Yes, it is. But one thing for risk mitigation that they do is the building structural inspection, right? So they do sort of simple audits just to make sure the building itself is structurally sound and is not likely to collapse. Now, is it sort of, hey, I cover my bottom, so if something wrong happens, I can show that I did some due diligence, versus do they really care?
I'm not sure. When I first started to work in that industry, I thought that, doing an audit was like a bottom covering exercise. But the more I've been to factories and with auditors, the more I think, well, actually, I understand why they do that. I get it. And I have seen auditors from various companies and what they look for. And, they do it. I don't think it's only for covering. I think it's just because the company does care, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. We just have a few minutes left. So recording this on the 9th of April, I think mentioning that is quite important.
We are absolutely, because things change every second.
Oh, yes. One tweet in a few seconds and maybe everything goes in a different direction, right? But everybody's talking about that, right? The White House is doing things. Beijing is retaliating. Then the White House is retaliating against the retaliation, which is against the reciprocal tariff and blah blah. So
I think as of today, we are at 104% duty on any goods from China into US, I believe.
From like midnight tonight. Yeah. That's what the White House mentioned. So we're not going to try to guess what's going to happen in the next few days, right? It's just a couple of bullies playing with each other. It's kind of a game, right? So anyway, no idea what direction it's going to.
We watch it from the sideline and just think, that has to stop at some point. And it looks like a game, but I think the market has not seen it as a game, because there was a massive drop, and I think it's continuing to drop slowly. So, and I think that some people have started to make noises that maybe there are some changes necessary in there, because it's not only putting the US in economic danger, but I think it's putting a lot of countries in economic danger. When you start taxing Ireland with only a few penguins on, for duty, you realize that maybe the people writing the plans are not really up to the job.
Yeah. And when you see the calculations, it's
yes.
I
had my most popular ever post on LinkedIn talking about tariff for Thailand a few weeks ago, last week, and it's still being commented on as we speak. So yes, I have been speaking about tariff quite a bit in the past few days. I've had lots of phone calls from and emails from people looking to source outside of China at the moment. One of my factories in Thailand has had several visits from very large retailers over the past few weeks. So yes, there are things going on. Although Thailand is being taxed at 36% as of today, but they're trying
Pretty
to
high right
negotiate.
now.
It is very
Yes.
high. It's
definitely.
ridiculously high for a much smaller economy with a much smaller GDP per capita. Expecting to spend as much money in the US as the US is spending here is just plain and straightforward ridiculous. But there we are.
Mm-hmm. So, just looking down at the next 2, 3, 4 years, do you think there will be tariffs in place on made in China products, on made in Thailand products? Let's just stick to these two countries, right?
Okay,
Do
so
you see the tariffs just going away?
I can see the point. Because it's not a level playing field. It's very difficult for foreign companies to go and do business in China. And I mean, very difficult. But it's not difficult for Chinese companies to go and do business outside of China. And therefore, something needs to change here. That is clear. You need a bit of a more level playing field. And, tariff was a way of working on this. But, going the way it is going at the moment, this is not the way to go. You should have, said, okay, we give you so many years to comply with this. And then if you don't comply, then there is retaliatory, but not the way it is being done at the moment. Yes, there should be tariff, but controlled, in a controlled manner. As for Thailand,
you don't see
Vietnam,
you don't see tariffs going away.
I don't think that. I don't see that going away. I don't see that going away at all. But, for smaller countries, which, have got a way smaller economy, the tariffs should also be there, probably, but, on a much lower, as they were, 5-10%. Yes, I understand. 36% is just ridiculous.
Well, we'll see how it goes. It's better not to try to read too much into the tea leaves or the crystal ball. So that's great. We'll mention your company, and we'll try to find that LinkedIn post on Thailand tariffs. We'll link to it in the show notes.
Thank you very much.
Cool. All right. Well, Thank you so much, Thierry.
Merci.
And
thank you.
And thanks to the listeners. And you will hear from us next week. Thanks.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much, much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share, because it will really help others discover us too.